Well, hello and welcome to the Healthy, Wealthy, Wise show. I'm your host, Corey Sievers, and it's going to be a bumper session, this particular session on the Healthy, Wealthy, Wise show, because we are talking about 5 cardiovascular myths busted by cardiologists. So these are the healthy heart myths that we're all told about. So, there's a lot of myths that are perpetuated around what it takes to prevent heart disease, create a healthier heart. And so we're actually going to hear from what some free-thinking cardiologists have to say about these common myths that you've probably heard. So all of that coming up in Healthy. And in Wealthy and Wise, we're actually going to be talking about going from chaos to freedom, how to take control and become organized, and actually the impact that getting organized has on the rest of your life and the amazing flow-on effect. So, look, if you're new to what we do here in the Savvy team, we're all about helping you reach that high level of health and lifestyle. And so when you connect in with our community, you'll have access to all of our wellness action plans and step-by-step programs to help you to tackle some of those wellness projects that you might be looking to tackle, like heart health, like weight loss, like detoxification, like anti-aging. If there's something that you want to improve about your health, then we can definitely guide you there. So, look, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here. We'd love to hear where you're coming in from, any thoughts and comments. This show is for you. This is really to provide, cutting edge information that we uncover from research and working with people, and be able to provide it to you so that you can put it all together. Because much of the information that we find, it's widely available in medical journals and all that sort of thing, but it can be very difficult to piece it all together and sort of chew it and digest it and be able to understand what it all means. And so we do the best as we can to put it together for you so that you have guidance and support to tackle these things and to prevent illness. So look, if you want to become part of our community, then definitely reach out and request an invitation, because what we're all about really is supporting and guiding you to achieve your wellness goals. So you'll never be alone again with us here in the Savvy team. And what we're really looking to do is to have an entire turnkey disease prevention and holistic wellness support system. And so a lot of the times this information is available, but people have no guidance and support. So it's really stressful trying to keep it all in your mind and understand where to go. And so when we just find that when people tap in, like you're doing if you're watching this particular show or listening to it on the podcast or whatever, when you actually tap in, then you move forward with your health so much faster because of that guidance and that support and that feeling like someone's got your back. So that's what we want to offer you here in the Savvy team. But look, congratulations for being here on the Savvy team's Healthy, Wealthy, Wise show. We are dealing with the heart. Matters of the heart. So it's going to be a fun show. Looking forward to it. In the past, we've attempted the gremlins, the digital gremlins have been out before, because when we first did this topic, the 5 healthy heart myths busted by cardiologists, we had challenges with some of the audio from the clips that I want to share with you directly from cardiologists. So you're actually going to hear, you'll still hear from me this show, but I'm a non-medical researcher, and I want you to hear these myths, like these myths being busted. I want you to hear it from the voices of free-thinking cardiologists. So, I really worked. This is our 3rd time lucky. When we first did the show, we had audio issues with the cardiologists. The 2nd time we attempted this topic, we had audio issues with the things that I was sharing. So, 3rd time lucky, right? So after many requests for us to redo this, we're finally back with the 5 healthy heart myths busted by cardiologists. So congratulations for being with us here on the show. So in Wealthy and Wise, of course, we will be dealing with that from chaos to freedom, 10 benefits of being organized. So look, if you are new to what we do here in the Savvy team, as I mentioned before, we're here to help you enjoy improved health and lifestyle. And so when you connect in with our community, you'll have access to all of the step-by-step action plans innovative solutions, and all the guidance and support that you really need to get the job done, to reach that higher level of wellness. Here's just a glimpse of some of the wellness plans that we have available for you, everything from anti-aging through to weight management, to better digestion and to detoxification. So we're here to inspire you, to motivate and guide you to reach your wellness goals. As we're getting underway with these 5 cardiovascular, these healthy heart myths, it's important that you're aware that everything we share here on the Healthy, Wealthy, Wise show and through the Savvy team, and anything that I might say in my comments is, reflects the personal research and experiences of myself and anyone else sharing, and is for educational purposes only, so should not be seen as medical advice, and this is not intended to be medical advice. The information is general in nature, and so therefore all of your individual health concerns have not been taken into account. Any comments and experiences should not be interpreted or taken as therapeutic claims or medical advice of any sort. If you have questions as to the appropriateness of the information with regards your own health, please discuss this with your healthcare provider. Now, that being said, we do encourage you to take personal responsibility, self-responsibility for your own well-being, and continually learn more on this topic and on complementary medicine in general, because as I'm about to share with you, I'm about to share myths. So although it's a requirement for me to suggest to you to work with your healthcare provider, much of these myths are being perpetuated by many healthcare providers out there. So the better educated you are, the better you can have more open discussions with your, with your doctors and healthcare providers. So that's what it's really. It's we have had many community members work with their, with open-minded doctors, work with their GP and everything, and just have extraordinary improvements in their health and well-being. And so this has all been, the doctor has worked with them. That's helped them to get off medication, has helped them to negotiate things within the system and everything. And so it's not an either or. We're focused on a wellness paradigm, on a complementary paradigm. So we strongly encourage you to work with a medical professional who can really do all the testing and all that sort of thing. That being said, as I said, we're going to be sharing with you other information that's sort of outside of the medical matrix. And so you're going to hear from, from medical professionals who have exited the matrix. They actually still do work within the matrix, but you're even going to hear from interventional cardiologists who used to do angioplasty and stenting and all these sorts of things, and now they focus on more of the complementary medical side of things, like we do. So they've made the shift. So all of that and more coming up on the show. Looking forward to this. With heart disease being in my family, it's an important topic, and I think it's an important topic for everyone to be aware of, since heart disease worldwide is the leading killer. So, if you're here watching this information, either catching the replay or watching this live with us now, I congratulate you for taking some interest, because the statistics are not in your favor if you don't make the changes. However, just getting here on the show, learning what we're about to share, and making changes can dramatically decrease your personal risk. Because, when we look at some of the information that's put out there as far as risk factors, they're all statistical risk factors. Whereas nothing will change your personal risk more than you personally changing your lifestyle towards creating a healthier heart. So, look, don't want to get too dramatic on you, but congratulations for being here. If you want to improve something about your health and wellness, we can definitely guide you there. And we've had a lot of people have great success with our 7 steps for a healthier heart, and even our what we call our Healthy Heart Challenge. So definitely we can guide you along the journey to creating a healthier heart. Now, cardiovascular disease is the world's biggest killer. So worldwide, we're looking about 17.5 million deaths per year from cardiovascular disease. 1 in 10 aged 30 to 70 will die from cardiovascular disease, and 31% of all deaths are from cardiovascular disease. And so this is, it's a big issue. It's a big issue. And the signs you might see 1 in 10, age 30 to 70. What do you mean, age 30 to 70? Well, autopsies of soldiers that have died in battle and died younger, they've seen the beginning stages of atherosclerotic disease. So, it's never too early and it's never too late to start doing something about improving the health of your cardiovascular system. So that brings us to the question of, what are we going to be doing? I mean, I thought I understood all of the exact things that I'm told to do. I'm told to eat low fat, eat plenty of healthy whole grains, get regular exercise, reduce smoking, all of these sorts of things. Well, yes, there are a lot of the risk factors, but there's a lot more than that. And unfortunately, you've been fed some wrong information over the last 50 years, and we want to correct that here with the information that we're sharing. Very, very important show. Okay, so 51 lives this is now Australian statistics, since we're here broadcasting from Australia. 51 lives every day lost to cardiovascular disease. 1/5 of Australians will suffer from cardiovascular disease. 1 Australian every 28 minutes will die from cardiovascular related issues. So by the time we complete the show, at least 3 Australians will have died from this preventable disease. From this preventable disease that experts believe is largely a lifestyle disease, just by the time we finish this show, for maybe even 4, because it's a bumper session. And you know that I can't stop talking about these sorts of issues. So, so anyway, you might say, so big, really serious issue. So please share this information with those that you care about, because it is a big issue. Now, you might say, look, nothing wrong with me. Absolutely nothing wrong with me. I'm good. I'm all good. I do all the right things. Well, there are some warning lights that go off in your vehicle. Just like the warning lights on a car, they make it very obvious that we need to check some things. There are some things that can be checked for you as well to, and a lot of people say there's nothing wrong with me, and cardiovascular disease and a heart attack sneaks up on them. And so the reason I have this picture here with trying to get the lid off a jar is because grip strength is one of the markers. So in fact, so in other words, if you have really strong grip, then it can lower your blood pressure. It's a marker of a healthy cardiovascular system. So my question is, what's your grip like? What's your grip like? Because and strengthening your grip, strengthening your grip strength. They even have now fancy machines that can show that you can reduce your blood pressure just by being able to, strengthen your grip. So, and train your blood pressure to come down by training increased grip strength. So it's interesting. There are a lot of things that show up. So if you have weak hands and all that sort of thing, it's a marker. It's a sign. It's a warning light. If you have blood sugar problems, if you have a large waist, if your waist circumference, or if your waist to height ratio is out of whack, so get your height, make sure your waist is less than half your height. So if you're 180 centimeters, you want a waist measurement that's less than 90, ideally. That's a bit of a sliding scale depending on your age, but that's an example. So again, central obesity is one of the warning lights. Obviously, so there's early warning lights. Many people think about the typical things. Well, I don't have chest pains, I don't have breathing difficulties, I don't have this and that. And there are some of the later stage things that are not the early warning signs. So what you want to do is you really want to be able to catch these early warning lights that are going off on the dashboard so that you know what to do. And, you can take preventative or interventional action, because symptoms are not enemies to be destroyed like it seems the medical model is focused on. Like, we have high blood pressure, so we must attack the blood pressure. We must attack the cholesterol. We must attack the blood sugar level. Symptoms are not enemies to be destroyed, but sacred messengers who encourage us to take better care of ourselves. Okay, so I encourage you to follow up maybe with the free online class that we have on the 9 cardiovascular early warning signs. Okay, because you might sort of say, well, what are these warning signs? But we put together this particular online class, and so if you're watching this on YouTube or you're catching up on the audio version of the podcast, this is a free web class that's available on our blog and on our on the Facebook page. So I would also encourage you perhaps to follow up with episode number 28 of the Healthy, Wealthy, Wise show, where we covered what your doctor may not tell you about preventing heart disease. And so that's episode 28. But we're going to jump on in to the 5 healthy heart myths busted by cardiologists. So first myth that I'm going to share with you is a bonus myth that's aside from the 5 that we've talked about before. So the bonus myth to start with is directly from Harvard Health. And that is that angioplasty and stenting or bypass surgery does not fix your heart. So the myth is that angioplasty and stenting or bypass is a fix for your heart. In actual fact, it is definitely not a fix. Very important for you to realize. I'll read straight from Harvard Health here. Angioplasty and bypass surgery can do wonders for relieving chest pain and improving your quality of life, but they do not stop the underlying disease, atherosclerosis. Without correcting the problems that contribute to atherosclerosis, your arteries will become clogged with fatty plaque again. Which can mean the return of angina or worse, a heart attack or stroke. What can you do? Well, after undergoing angioplasty or bypass surgery, it is important for you to correct the problems that led to the need for the procedure. Here's where we differ. Here's where I differ from Harvard Health, because they're regurgitating the same old stuff that is no longer proven to be factual, such as high cholesterol and high blood pressure, a poor diet, smoking, and lack of exercise. Now, we agree that a poor diet, smoking, and lack of exercise are definitely markers because they're lifestyle markers that you can do something about. But what we assert is there's far too much treating the actual number of the cholesterol, treating the number of the blood pressure without considering the lifestyle, the lifestyle of the patient. So we encourage and really support and commend those physicians who have moved away from treating the number and are actually thinking of treating the actual patient and reducing their personal risk. Because when you treat the number, you're only reducing statistical risk, not personal risk. Only your personal lifestyle can reduce your personal risk. And so just by taking medication to treat the number does not necessarily reduce your personal risk. It's only statistically relevant. You may not realize that, but we're going to hopefully uncover all of that for you and more in this show. So looking at what we mean by stenting and angioplasty. So basically the cardiac intervention procedures right now are things such as stenting here, where they put in a balloon, squash back the plaque, and then put a stent to maintain that, really to restore the flow to the vessel. So it hasn't corrected the underlying issue and at all. Then there's also more invasive procedures such as bypass, and so obviously I'm not going into that in depth. But bypassing is where they just leave the original blockage in place and put in an extra vein around the outside to be able to find a way for the blood to flow. So just to give you just a bit of an example of a high magnification microscope look at a vessel and what it looks like when it's starting to build up. I won't go into depth. I did talk about this more in some of the other shows about what you can learn from this, from this actual image, because much of the understanding around this for the layperson is misdirected. And it's also partially misdirected by the doctor, because I was actually at a doctor discussing the fact that I do have more elevated familial cholesterol. So it's just generally my cholesterol has been generally higher, and certainly got higher after I was put on Roaccutane, which isn't good for the liver. But anyway, we won't go there. It's irrelevant in the scheme of things, because you've got to reduce all the other risk factors. So I was having a discussion with the doctor, and this particular doctor, who I believe, terrible thing to say, she basically drew a circle around on a piece of paper and said, your cholesterol's high, and that means your arteries are blocked. It was an imbecilic thing to say. And so what I hope is that she didn't actually believe that, she was just trying to simplify it for me. But don't get me started. I respect the actual training that medical professionals have had to go through. I do not want to be a doctor, but what I do want to do is, I'm a passionate researcher, and I want to present you with evidence for you to make informed decisions and to communicate with your doctor, okay? And to actually be part of your own care. One of the frustrations, from doctors that I've spoken to is that many patients don't actually participate in their own care. They just want a pill that fixes their ills. So so again, it's which came first, the doctor prescribing the medication or the patient demanding it? It's the chicken or the egg scenario here. Hey, so this is a cooperative partnership between you and your doctor. So work with them. All right, so look at that on that particular topic there about these procedures are not a cure. Here is the voice of a cardiologist, eminent Sydney-based cardiologist. Dr. Ross Walker says coronary artery bypass grafting does not cure heart disease and is in reality a temporary procedure until you get your life in order. Basically, until you have corrected the cause of whatever the disease that befalls you, it will reoccur after a certain period of time, despite the best efforts of some surgeon or other physician. Really, really important. And Sir William Osler, who is a Canadian doctor and one of the 4 founding professors at Johns Hopkins Hospital, said a man is as old as his blood vessels. Ladies, that goes for you too. So what we must do is, we've got to move away from treating the numbers for the typical risk factors. So, from the government, this is from a government website looking at the risk factors, the cardiovascular disease risk factors, everything from smoking, high blood cholesterol, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, being overweight, insufficient physical activity, high alcohol use, poor diet and nutrition, and a family history. These are the typical risk factors, okay? And so you might notice that what happens is that the numbers are the things that get treated. So we have to say, give up the smoking. That makes sense. Lose some weight. Start some exercise. Stop drinking alcohol. Clean up your diet and all that sort of thing. So, but a lot of the focus on the intervention is put into treating the number of high blood pressure and treating the number of high cholesterol. And so what we really need is a bit of a revolution, and that is to do the right things to correct these things here. So cardiologist Dr. Mark Houston said that if we do the right things, we could reduce the incidence of cardiovascular disease by 80%. If we did the right things. So by him saying that, he's asserting that we as a medical profession are doing the wrong things. Or not quite the right things, we could say. So that's what I mean. I'm here to present the voice of cardiologists into this, package it up here into these 5 healthy heart myths. So before we get underway with those 5 myths, this is all part of the bonus myth so that you understand the importance of you actually taking responsibility. So what I'd like to do related to treating the number is actually introduce you to Dr. Mark Houston. And look, if some of this doesn't make sense to you, the words that they're using, it's irrelevant. It's about getting the picture of the importance of you taking control, and just know that our programs and support are there to guide you along the implementation of these sorts of things. So we got your back. But let's have a listen to Dr. Mark Houston.
Hypertension is not a disease. Hypertension is really a manifestation of an abnormal vascular system. The arteries are functionally and structurally abnormal. So we have to get away from the concept that we're treating the sphygmomanometer, that we're treating a number. We've got to get back to the basics of what is the true underlying physiology of hypertension. What sets off the response of an abnormal artery to cause a response in the systemic circuit that we call hypertension or elevated blood pressure. So if we go back to the basics, we look at the arterial structure and arterial function in a very different format. And the relationship is what's coming in to the arterial system, what are the infinite insults that come into the artery, and it responds in three ways. There's only three finite responses to the arterial system. So what are they? One is inflammation, two is oxidative stress, and three is autoimmune dysfunction of the arterial system. No matter what the incoming insult happens to be, whether it's chemical abnormalities, toxins, pesticides, blood sugar, lipids, or anything else you can conjure up that is considered a biochemical or microbial or some sort of abnormality that would be an infinite environmental insult. When that comes into the artery, it can only respond in those three ways. So on the arterial wall, there are receptors. And those receptors basically pattern recognize what's coming in. Thus, they're called pattern recognition receptors. They have other fancy names like toll-like receptor, nod receptor, and calveoli. And these receptors look at what's coming in, and they decide whether it's friend or whether it's a foe. If it decides that it's friendly, then the response will not be abnormal. It will basically be, blood pressure not going to go up, not going to respond to that insult in an abnormal way. But if that insult happens to be a foreign compound, the arterial wall senses that. And what it says is, I have to respond to this in an acute setting. If you keep insulting the arterial wall with that same insult, then it becomes a chronic, dysregulated response.
So if you followed our Savvy team, what we do here in the Savvy team for any length of time, and you understand our easy as 1, 2, 3 philosophy about decreasing toxin exposure, increasing nutrition, and optimizing the body's systems, you'll start to see that, hang on, Dr. Houston is sort of asserting the same sorts of things. There's an unlimited number of insults out there on our cardiovascular system, and if we allow them to keep happening, then we end up with the response from our blood vessels. And so, the way he explains it is that the blood vessels, if you're a smoker and you smoke, the blood vessels say, I didn't really like that, but they have to respond. If you eat deep fried food, the blood vessels say, I didn't really like that, but they have to respond. And so they're designed to respond in an acute setting, but if you do that same thing over a chronic length of time, then we have issues. And so Dr. Houston usually only lectures to doctors, by the way. So that sort of information is usually what doctors are hearing. And he has he has a book that's both for lay people as well as for medical professionals. So his medical professional book is the Handbook on Hypertension, and for lay people, it's What Your Doctor May Not Tell You About Heart Disease. And So yeah, so look up those sorts of things if you like and follow through. But that's our first cardiologist, and understand. Really want you to understand there that cardiovascular disease is a response to the things that you've done through your life chronically. And so that means that chronically, most people aren't doing the right things because it's the leading killer in the Western world. And so many people are even doing the things that they've been told by all the experts to do, and they're still in it with cardiovascular disease because we've been told some of the wrong things. So again, I wanted to introduce this before we get into these 5 cardiovascular myths. This is the bonus myth that we can't just treat the number, and that just the procedure is not a fix. It is a lifestyle disease. But because it's a lifestyle disease, it's largely preventable. You can take action today that would reduce your actual risk. That's the thing. You are in total control from today. So let's listen to our next cardiologist, who's talking about the importance of not just focusing on the number. So Dr. Sanjay Gupta from the UK. Let's have a listen to what he has to say.
Hi guys, my name is Sanjay Gupta. I'm a consultant cardiologist in New York. Today I wanted to do another video on blood pressure and why the numbers are not as important as we think. Now, the first thing to say is there is nothing that generates more anxiety than high blood pressure numbers. Okay, as part of my work, when I do a clinic, patients come, they have their blood pressure measured by the nurses, and the first thing that everyone worries about is, oh my God, what was my blood pressure? What was my blood pressure? And what I wanted to try and do is try and make things slightly clearer, because I don't think the numbers are that important. So let me try and explain this in a simplistic sense so that you can understand it. Okay, the reason blood pressure is considered important is because if people have a persistently elevated blood pressure, then there is evidence that they are at a higher risk of heart attacks and strokes over many years. Okay, and if you can lower the blood pressure, then there is evidence that it reduces that risk by about 25% as a ballpark figure. However, it is not as straightforward as just lowering the number, and I'm going to try and explain this by using an analogy. Okay, so imagine you're visiting a construction site, okay, and you see a sign on the construction site, which we often do, which says people here must wear a helmet. People who are visiting must wear a helmet. So you have to say, why do these people need to wear a helmet? And the answer is that the chances of something falling on someone's head are high, and if they were wearing a helmet, that could reduce their risk of dying from injury by 25%, an arbitrary figure. But this is true for wherever we are. So for example, I don't have to be on a construction site. I could be sitting in my study here talking to you, and if the roof on my head decides to collapse and I were wearing a helmet at that time, then the helmet would still reduce my risk of dying by 25%. But the chances of the roof falling on my head are very, very low whilst I'm in my study compared to if I were on a construction site. So in some ways, there is more to it than just the idea that a helmet protects you. There has to be something more to it. So in blood pressure, we realize that it's far more important as to who you are and what your other risks are, which decide your risk of stroke. So let me give you an example. There was a very interesting study, or an interesting paper by Erica Wallace in Heart Journal 2002, which was called Cardiovascular and Coronary Risk Estimation in Hypertension Management. And what they found, what they demonstrate is this. They said that actually, let me just bring this up. Yeah, they took 2 patients. They demonstrated 2 patient groups. Okay, both patients had a blood pressure of 150/96. But patient A was young, she was female, she had low cholesterol, she was a non-smoker, she didn't have diabetes, and in her, the risk of having a problem in 10 years was incredibly low. In fact, you would have had to treat 321 people with blood pressure medications to make any difference to one person. However, there was another patient with the same blood pressure of 150/96. He was male, he was much older, 65, his cholesterol was high, he was a smoker, he was diabetic. In him, the risk of something bad happening to him over 10 years was much higher. And therefore, you only needed to treat 16 people to make a difference to one life. So what this goes to show is it's not the blood pressure that is important. It's all the other things. It's the age. It's whether you have diabetes. It's whether you smoke. It's whether you're sedentary. If you are someone who is generally fit and well, who doesn't smoke, who doesn't have any risk factors, who lives a healthy lifestyle, who minimizes his stress, who sleeps well, your risks from having a high blood pressure are incredibly low. If, on the other hand, you do all those things which are actually bad for our health, including being overweight, smoking, being stressed, not sleeping, being diabetic, etc., then the risk is much higher. And therefore, what I'm trying to get across is that the number is not important. What we shouldn't be doing is focusing on, oh my God, this is my number, I need to get that down. What we should be concentrating on is the general state of our health and thinking, okay, well, if I'm sedentary, then I need to get more exercise. If I'm stressed, I need to minimize my stress. If I smoke, I need to cut that down. Trying to move from being an unhealthy person to a healthy person makes a far bigger difference to our overall risk compared to just reducing the number or making the number look nicer. So I hope this takes away some of the anxiety that people may have when they say, oh my God, what's my blood pressure, etc. Why is the blood pressure not going down? Don't worry about the blood pressure number. Concentrate on becoming a healthier person. Concentrate on sorting out your other risks and your comorbidities, and your risk from the blood pressure will automatically come down. The blood pressure is just a number. There's nothing magical about it. It's a number. This again raises another point, which is, every so often the guidelines change and they'll say, oh, a blood pressure of 150/90 is high blood pressure. Then they bring the value down. They change the goalpost after a few years. Now they're saying blood pressure of 135/80 is high blood pressure. So the point I'm trying to make is why is that? And the answer is because people are generally getting unhealthier. That's why. So even at lower blood pressures, unhealthy people have bad things. Bad things happen to them. And healthy people, even with higher blood pressures, remain fine. And that is why the guidelines keep changing the number, because the number is not as important. The fact that we are getting more stressed, we're leading worse lifestyles than, say, 10 years ago means that there are more events happening. And that is why they're bringing the number down and saying, oh, treat these people early. But the way to treat them is to reduce overall risk.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. Couldn't have said it better myself. Look, and this is the thing that many, as I'm saying, our panel of experts today are all going to back up some of the things that we've been teaching here. So it's not just us sharing this, it's information direct from cardiologists here. And so please understand that obviously, if chances are this person I'm about to describe wouldn't even be on this show, or were listening to the audio or catching the YouTube video or any of that sort of thing. So if you have no intention of making any lifestyle changes like giving up smoking, taking up any exercise, changing your diet, if you have absolutely zero intention of making any change, then medication is wise for you. So following anything that your doctor prescribes is very, very wise. Treating the number is wise because you have no intention of changing. So chances are that person is not on the show here or listening to this information in any way, shape, or form. But if you're here, then you're somebody who obviously cares about your long-term actual well-being. And as Dr. Gupta said there, you can dramatically reduce your risk. Now, he also raised a concept about the NNT number buried in his conversation there, the number needed to treat. And he sort of said if somebody didn't change their lifestyle, and they went on to blood pressure medication, you'd need to treat this many people before one was helped. Whereas in the people who changed their lifestyle, less was needed to treat. And you're like, oh, hang on, I don't understand that. If I'm taking blood pressure medication, surely it helps me. No, it's only statistically relevant. If you lower your blood pressure from natural means, you actually lower your blood pressure by becoming healthier. you have dramatically decreased your personal risk. If you lower it with a medication, you haven't necessarily reduced your personal risk at all, because that risk reduction is only statistically relevant, not personally relevant. You may not realize that. Your doctor can't guarantee you that that medication will save your life. And if the doctor actually says, as I've heard, people have reported to me that their doctor has said, take the medication or you'll die. That's actually false. Okay? They're almost asserting that if you take the medication, you won't die. Take the medication or you'll die. Meaning, and that's just not factually correct. So anyway, don't get me started. All right. So, and that's why, that's why I was sharing Dr. Mark Houston here said that we need a heart revolution. If we did the right things, we could reduce the incidence of cardiovascular disease by 80%. And that means that, just like Benjamin Franklin said many, many years ago, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And that's why, when we're dealing with cardiovascular disease, it's intervention, it's not cure. You're not curing when you have a procedure like a stent or bypass surgery. It's not a cure, it's an intervention. And that is why I prefer my saying better. An ounce of prevention is worth a ton of intervention. Okay, it's worth a ton of intervention. The more you can do now with lifestyle prevention, it's just worth such an amazing amount in terms of the prevention, in terms of intervention. So, under Dr. Molly Roberts, love this, that your body will start by whispering, then it'll start talking. And if you don't pay attention, it'll start yelling and shouting, but then you have an illness. So there's warning signs. There's these early warning signs. And the problem is that in disease today, most of the time, in the treatment paradigm, they're treating the signs and the symptoms to prevent disability and premature death when we look at our illness-wellness continuum here. So they're attacking the symptoms, not the underlying causes, just to get you back to that neutral point. So, like if we look at the symptoms of a poor cardiovascular system and insults on our cardiovascular system, in hypertension, for example, that's the symptom. So the treatment paradigm treats the symptom, not the actual underlying issue. So if we simply focus on treating the symptoms without correcting the underlying causes, then you're never actually going to reach a high level of wellness. You'll only do that through awareness, education, self-responsibility, and indeed growth. And that's what we're here to help you do here in the Savvy team. And we're really calling upon many members of our community and the public to be heart heroes, to join us in a healthier heart movement. Because the Dalai Lama said, for example, just as ripples spread out when a single pebble is dropped into water, the actions of individuals can have far-reaching effects. So we can really make a difference to at least our friends and family, but also to the world by sharing this sort of information. Now, since we're talking about cardiovascular disease and these sorts of things around disease of the cardiovascular system, it is important that you realize that there are 6 signs that you should never ignore. Okay, so chest pain. So for example, if you have chest pain, tightness or discomfort, it's really important to get this checked. Okay, women may experience different symptoms than men, but chest pain is still the #1 warning sign for both sexes. And understand that it may not be what's depicted in the Hollywood movies, but this can be pain or intense pressure, feeling like an elephant sitting on your chest, for example. This is a common warning sign. Then we have things such as shortness of breath, especially simply while being at rest. So if you're feeling like breathing difficulties just sitting down, then that's not a good warning sign. Coughing and wheezing that doesn't go away can be a sign of fluid buildup in your lungs. Palpitations, for faster uneven heartbeat, for example, skipping, fluttering, and all that sort of thing. This is sort of for an extended period of time. Really, really important for you to get yourself checked out. Arm, neck, jaw, or back pain. Okay, if it worsens, if the discomfort worsens when you're exerting yourself and then stops when you quit exercising, you should get yourself checked out. and nausea, lightheadedness, or indigestion, also important. So these are, these are all some of the more significant warning signs, but I encourage you to take a look at all of the early warning signs that we have in that other web class, the 9 cardiovascular disease early warning signs, because chances are you're not watching this show if these warning signs are more further down the spectrum as such. Okay, but again, important that if you're experiencing any of those, then it's very important that you get yourself checked out by your doctor, make sure you're all stable, see what's going on and all that sort of thing, and get proper testing. We're very fortunate in most of our Western worlds here with the actual medical advances in testing and life-saving intervention. What we're talking about here is not against any of those things. We're actually talking about what you can do each and every day to prevent these diseases from developing. So cardiologist Dr. Mark Houston said if we did the right things, we could reduce the incidence of cardiovascular disease by 80%. I'm not in any way, shape or form, and neither are we here in the Savvy team, putting down any of the good work that people in the interventional cardiology realm deal with, because this is saving the lives of people who have unfortunately not followed a lifestyle that has prevented cardiovascular disease. We're here as a Healthy Heart Movement, a call to arms really, that you support us in broadcasting this information wider so that people know what to do to reduce their individual personal risk. All right, let's talk some more about the healthy heart myths, but all of that sort of thing. Symptoms, any symptom that you're having, it's not an enemy to be destroyed. But obviously, when we think about this, the leading cause of death in the Western world, any of these symptoms are sacred messengers to encourage us to take better care of ourselves. All right, it's about time that we get underway with these 5 healthy heart myths busted by cardiologists. I wanted to add that extra myth in so that you really understand that it's lifestyle change, that when you change your personal lifestyle across the board, lose weight, stop smoking, begin exercising, eat a healthy diet, eat savvy diet, you'll start to reduce your personal risk. So let's jump on into myth number 1 and hear from some more of our panel of experts here. So myth number 1 is lower your cholesterol. Saturated fat is deadly. So it's sort of like a double banger of a myth here. This is decades of advice that is incorrect. Okay? Decades of advice that is incorrect. The number 1 risk factor is not cholesterol, as many experts are asserting, but it's insulin resistance. And I think I've got some of our panel of experts here to share that with you, but otherwise I'll share it with you as part of the rest of the procedure. But processed foods, not good. Carbs and refined carbs, deep fried oils, these are all bad. Sedentary lifestyle, stress, all of these sorts of things. Many doctors are simply out of date. They're focusing on all of the wrong things. Cholesterol is not the major enemy. We've been misled over the last 50 years because of a flawed hypothesis, the lipid hypothesis, based on flawed science. So a little bit of a funny cartoon to lighten the load here. So, right from Randy Glasbergen here. I've always been a high achiever. I've always been striving for bigger, faster, greater. And suddenly I'm expected to settle for lower blood pressure and less cholesterol? Come on, doc. All right, so let's actually hear from Dr. Aseem Malhotra, a cardiologist who is very outspoken about this issue related to statins and cholesterol, and endorses a diet very similar to what we recommend here in the Savvy team with the Eat Savvy diet. So let's listen to Dr. Aseem Malhotra.
They say that we are missing the point. Well, heart specialist Aseem Malhotra is behind the report and is with me now. So interesting to have you with us. This is blowing up traditional wisdom, all the things we've been told for years. What is the point then?
The reality, Lucy, is that decades of advice to lower blood cholesterol through reducing saturated fat in the diet and also the use of drugs has failed to eradicate, if you like, the epidemic of heart disease. It's still one of the biggest killers in the Western world. And the reason for that is the focus has been misguided. It's been wrong, essentially. We know that saturated fat, based upon very robust data and studies now, shows that there is no association with the development of heart disease or type 2 diabetes or death. In fact, there is some data suggesting that saturated fat from dairy products actually may protect against heart disease and type 2 diabetes.
It's bad for you in other ways, though, saturated fat,
Well, actually, there are different types of saturated fat, and they have different effects. What we need to be doing is focusing on real, non-processed foods. It's interesting. There's also been a bit of there's a misguided information on, for example, you have a picture of a burger and fries, and people think high in saturated fat. Well, actually, the actual meat, the red meat, the burger, has less than 10% saturated fat. The real problem with that food are the refined carbohydrates, which are the white bread, the bun, if you like, deep fried in vegetable oil, potatoes, or the chips. That's where the problem is. But what we're trying to do in this editorial is also shift the focus to where the underlying real cause of heart disease is, and that's based upon the number one risk factor, which is insulin resistance. Essentially, your body over time becoming resistant to the hormone insulin, basically foods that push up your glucose persistently, and also lifestyle factors such as sedentary lifestyle, which means lack of exercise. But you can solve these problems by simple changes, such as walking just 30 minutes a day. And the third thing is stress. Stress has a big impact on heart disease, and we need to think more about how we cope with stress, getting better sleep. So if we shift the focus towards insulin resistance and inflammation, which is what causes the furring of the arteries in the first place, away from the obsession with lowering cholesterol, which hasn't, in good quality data, lowering cholesterol through diet has never benefited people either with established heart disease who haven't had it in reducing death rates or heart attacks, then we will be able to really combat at least 80% of heart disease.
But why have we had this obsession then with lowering cholesterol? People got to get their cholesterol measured all the time. We buy things in the shops as well that say they promise to lower cholesterol. Is that part of the issue?
It's the root cause of the problem, and because what's happened is we focused on this, food industry have come in, they've then started marketing low cholesterol foods loaded with sugar. We're now consuming too much sugar. It was based upon flawed science, basically. I think the original research had the best will and intentions to think that this would help, but it clearly hasn't to a significant degree. The biggest decline in death rates from heart disease that have happened in the last 30 years have happened because of reduction in smoking, which needed health policy changes, and reduction in trans fats in foods. So if we go more back to a traditional way of living where we're eating non-processed food, and we're exercising every day just by walking, and we think about combating stress, we will be able to eradicate heart disease. But what we're up against is really an establishment that, in my view, is too close to industry. So one of the problems we have is that we have a multi-billion-dollar industry that benefits from this or profits from this message about lowering cholesterol, both through diet and drugs. But that industry also has co-opted universities, influential scientists, even charities, to then give information which are based on half-truths. And, that's why we have a healthcare crisis right now.
I'm just reading some of the criticism of your findings, or your report, saying it's simplistic, muddled and misleading. More specifically, because this doctor says decades of research have proved that a diet rich in saturated fat increases bad LDL cholesterol in your blood, and that puts you at greater risk of heart attack and stroke.
I'm very glad you've said that. Unfortunately, whoever gave that comment is not up to date with the science. Saturated fat does increase so-called bad cholesterol LDL, but there's two things to say. It also increases the good cholesterol HDL, so the overall effect on cholesterol profile is neutral at best. The second thing to say is very interesting. I was involved in some research published last year which showed if you're over 60, high LDL, the so-called bad cholesterol, is not associated with heart disease and is inversely associated with mortality. In other words, you're less likely to die. The reason for that is cholesterol is a very vital molecule in the body. It's not just about the heart, it protects in the immune system as well.
Great to have you with us. Mediterranean.
So, did you catch some of those hints and tips there? Interesting, hey? So it's a very valuable segment there, very valuable panel expert there, Dr. Malhotra. Now, a few things that he mentioned there about obviously the fact that there was another doctor calling in saying decades of research has proven that sort of thing, and he said, I'm glad you raised that, but that person is simply not up to date with the research. This is the problem. Doctors are very, very busy, and they're only fed the research from drug companies. And so if they're not reading some of the latest research, it's very hard for them to stay up to date. That's why we suggest you stay as educated as you can and tap in with the sorts of education that we provide you, so that you know how to discuss things with your doctor. And we have an entire post that we're curating on our Healthy Wealthy Wise blog called The Case Against Statins. So you might want to check that out as well. And so that instead of producing multiple posts, we're going to continue to update that one post. So you can bookmark that, leave your comments, come back, and we can sort of make that a growing resource for videos and education and understanding around this issue, this misguided, misleading issue of treating cholesterol. Did you catch that Dr. Malhotra said that when you're older, lowering your having high cholesterol actually reduces your all-cause mortality? So you're less likely to die if you have higher cholesterol from any cause when you're older. And yet you're being told to lower your cholesterol with a medication that has numerous side effects. Interesting, isn't it? So that's a voice of a cardiologist who's speaking out against the establishment, and certainly Dr. Malhotra recommends more of a low carbohydrate diet, very much along the lines of the Eat Savvy diet. So you might want to download our free Eat Savvy diet and have a look at that. So the back to our other cardiologist we mentioned before, Dr. Mark Houston, and he was speaking earlier about hypertension, but the cholesterol-centric idea for reducing heart disease is really misleading, he says, which is along the lines of what Dr. Malhotra said. And so he says, what Dr. Mark Houston said is, if you look at your cholesterol and then treat it with a statin and reduce it, so this is you personally, if you, for example, were to treat high cholesterol with a statin, 50 to 75% of you will still have a heart attack because it's not tackling the actual real underlying risk factors. So myth number one is that you must lower your cholesterol and that saturated fat is deadly. I think you've got an idea that that's a definite myth. Myth number two is to eat lots of whole grain goodness and complex carbs. And you'll still see this across all of the medical establishment repeated. So when I've said a lot of the information that I'm sharing, you won't find on the first 10 pages of Google. It's pretty scary. So if you were, for example, let's just take it away from you making any personal decision about yourself, and you were doing an assignment. You were doing an assignment about the risk factors for cardiovascular disease and the dietary approach that you should follow. And you were to research all the medical sites in the first 10 pages of Google. You would think that you were doing the right thing. But all of the sites are just copying the same dogma over and over and over and over again. So you would put together an evidence-based argument that we have to reduce our cholesterol, we have to reduce our blood pressure, we have to do all of the other risk factors and eat healthy whole grains, limit saturated fat, all those sorts of things. You would find all of this information, and yet they're all myths perpetuated by industry. And yet you could say it's evidence-backed because it's just misguided. So it's hard. I know as a consumer it's very hard because even if you feel like you've been doing the right thing, you feel like you've been duped, led astray and everything. And look, science changes all the time. And this is the interesting thing that they even say with doctors, that they know that 50% of what when they exit medical school, 50% of what they learn will be outdated already. The problem is they don't know which 50%. So they start practicing. So, and that's nothing against that. For all of us, in every single thing that we do, information can change. And so it's staying up to date and really not being attached to dogma that can allow you to adjust and improve your chances of a long and healthy life. So eat lots of healthy whole grain goodness and complex carbs. Myth number two. So a bit of a funny here from Randy Glasbergen. The high carb diet, this is in the doctor's office, the high carb diet I put you on 20 years ago gave you diabetes, high blood pressure, and heart disease. Whoops. Yes, whoops indeed. And that is, that's pretty much established. So what we're going to do now is we are going to have a listen to our next professional speaker, our next expert on the panel of cardiologists today. And to deal with this particular myth, we have Dr. William Davis, an ex-interventional cardiologist, so someone who used to do stents and all this sort of stuff, and now has been able to reverse cardiovascular, like atherosclerotic disease, with lifestyle interventions, just as we recommend here in the Savvy team. So he's author of The Wheat Belly and a whole bunch of other books, such as Undoctored, which is one of his newer books there about really avoiding being part of the sickness industry. But I think you'll find this really valuable. So let's listen to Dr. Davis.
I'm Dr. William Davis, author of the Wheat Belly and Undoctored books. Over the years, people have often asked me, how did you come to the conclusions that you advocate in your books? Well, to explain, I have to go back 25 years. That's when I was practicing as an interventional cardiologist, and I was attending the American College of Cardiology meetings in Atlanta, where there were lectures and demonstrations for new devices and those kind of things. Well, one of the lectures was given by Dr. Dean Ornish. Some of you may recognize that name. He's a physician who advocates a super low-fat vegetarian diet. No animal products, no animal fats, no butter, just vegetables, fruit, and whole grains. Well, he claims to have reversed heart disease and in his lifestyle heart trial. That's another story, but he never did reverse heart disease. He misinterpreted the data. And, of course, heart disease did not come to a halt in a handful of participants in his study. They continued to have angina, need for procedures, heart attacks, etc. So he did not reverse heart disease. Nonetheless, I took him at his word at the start, and I thought I'd give this a try. So I put myself on the Ornish diet, and I eliminated all animal products, no butter, no olive oil, just vegetables, fruits, and whole grains. I gained 30 pounds. My triglycerides went to 390. My HDL, the good value, dropped to 27, which is a high-risk level. I developed oodles of small LDL particles, the stuff that causes heart disease, not LDL cholesterol like Big Pharma says, because they make money with their statin drugs, their silly statin drugs. I became a type 2 diabetic with fasting blood sugars in the 160 range. I had irritable bowel syndrome, eczema. I was tired all the time, and I was hungry all the time. And this all happened even though I was jogging 3, 4, 5 or more miles several times a week. I called Dr. Ornish. I explained this to him, and he accused me of not doing the diet right. He said, "You're eating too much white flour products." And I said, "No, I actually eat no white flour products." Well, he had no explanation, of course. So I stopped doing the silly diet, and all of it went away. I'm no longer diabetic. My HDL is 94. My triglycerides, last I checked, are 47. My blood pressure is normal, etc. But it was that experience with the Ornish diet was a vivid illustration of how awful health can get if you do the wrong diet. Now, the ideas I advocate come from more than my own personal experience, but that personal experience started my journey in trying to understand diet. Now, the other mistake I made was, of course, to load my diet up with whole grains. Huge mistake for a long list of reasons. That's why there's 7 Wheat Belly books. But among the reasons are the gliadin protein of wheat is partially digested to opioid peptides that bind to the opioid receptors of the human brain, and they trigger appetite. That's why people who consume grains are always hungry. That's why people with a genetic predisposition towards bulimia or binge eating disorder get 24-hour-a-day food obsessions. So that's the gliadin protein of wheat. There's wheat germ agglutinin that's completely indigestible, and it goes through the gastrointestinal tract intact, never gets digested at all. But in its passage through the gastrointestinal tract, it is very destructive. It irritates and inflames the gastrointestinal lining. It blocks gallbladder function. It blocks the action of pancreatic enzymes. And of course, there's amylopectin A. That's the carbohydrate, the complex carbohydrate of wheat and grains that we're told are better than sugar. No, they're not. They actually raise blood sugar higher than table sugar. So that's why people who consume a lot of grains, weigh their diets heavily in grains, become type 2 diabetics and gain weight because they generate insulin resistance. So these are the mistakes I made, among the mistakes I made, but that started to make me wonder, what in the world is it wrong? If you would think eating vegetables, fruits, and whole grains would be healthy, right? No, it's terrible. I learned that lesson the hard way. I've since done this now many thousands, hundreds of thousands of times, and I see the astounding results of not eating low fat, of not eating whole grains, okay, of including fats and oils and meats and butter and things like that. So that was how I began my journey, and the lessons were refined over time. Now, the next lesson I learned was that you could regress heart disease. I'll tackle that in another video.
And that's what we're really dealing with here, that there's so much that can be done to regress heart disease. But what we first got to do is we've got to be doing the right things. Remember, Dr. Mark Houston said if we do the right things, we can reduce the incidence of heart disease by 80%. So he's asserting that we're currently doing the wrong things. And this myth number 2, eat lots of healthy whole grains, that's the challenge. Look, many people sort of still think that, it's gluten or whatever. And then there are some experts out there sort of debunking that, saying everybody thinks it's gluten, and so everybody thinks they're gluten intolerant. It's not about the gluten, it's about some of the other things that are in the grains. And what Dr. Davis just went through is a whole bunch of different things that were apart from gluten. So when you avoid, that's why in this Eat Savvy Diet, we don't talk about going gluten-free. We talk about going grain-free. Eliminate the grains and you'll be better off, because you'll eliminate most of these inflammatory agents that Dr. Davis certainly digs into there. So there you have it. Myth number 2 was eat lots of healthy whole grain goodness and complex carbohydrates. You actually are better off to avoid the grains if you want to reduce cardiovascular disease. Remember too that we just heard earlier Dr. Malhotra say that insulin resistance, as I've already shared with you too, and we've shared in other programs, and it's great to hear these cardiologists coming in and seeing that it's insulin resistance that's the cause, the underlying cause, and that's more likely to occur through eating grains. Let's move on to myth number 3, and that is that you need to significantly lower your salt intake. Now, whilst that can be an issue, certainly sodium retention, all this sort of thing can be an issue for many people. A lot of the guidelines sort of talk about reducing sodium, and they sort of say avoid the packaged foods because they're so high in sodium. And that's true, and we absolutely agree with avoiding processed and packaged foods that might have the nasty salt, along with additives, along with trans fats, along with processed carbohydrates and sugars and all that sort of thing. So in packaged foods, there's a whole bunch of nasties. One of them is too much sodium. So, it's like one of the examples I saw with one of the rundowns trying to help people. They were saying, don't have this sauce because this packaged sauce because it's got this much sodium. Reach for this sauce because it's less in sodium. But when I looked at the actual bottle, it had more sugar. So reducing the sodium and getting something that has more added sugar, which is more of the problem. So there's no doubt we should eliminate the packaged foods, but actually quality salt and lots of additional trace minerals makes a huge difference. And let's just think about this. What's the first thing they do when you end up in the hospital? For any reason? Any idea? They put you on a drip. And what's the drip? Sodium chloride and water, basically. So salt and water. It's a bit of a hint. Maybe some good salt and lots of water, drinking plenty of water might be a good idea. Of course, unless you have kidney problems and all of those sorts of things, that's an entirely different topic. So let's hear again from Dr. Davis and his opinions on what we should do related to salt.
I can't stress this enough. When you're first starting out in your program, to salt your food. And I really mean that. Salt your food. preferably with a mineral-rich form of salt like sea salt or Himalayan pink salt. The amount of minerals are modest, but every little bit helps because we're all mineral deficient. At the start of the program, certainly, and even long-term can have mineral deficiency. So any healthy source of minerals can really help. This, of course, is coupled with better hydration. So we hydrate more, particularly in the first 10 days or so of your experience, where you're losing a lot of water. Now, how much salt? Well, you may have gathered from other conversations that the common advice given to us by the American Heart Association, U.S. government, other agencies, that we should limit our salt intake, our sodium intake, to 2,300 milligrams per day. And people with serious issues like congestive heart failure and some forms of hypertension should limit their sodium to 1,500 milligrams per day. Well, that has now been found to be a really bad idea. In fact, there's a dramatic increase in the death rate from cardiovascular disease when you cut sodium intake. In other words, the national advice that Americans should limit their salt intake to 2,300 milligrams per day has led to an increased death from cardiovascular disease, just like the ridiculous advice to cut fat, saturated fat, and cholesterol led to obesity and an epidemic of type 2 diabetes and other diseases. In other words, conventional dietary advice is boneheaded. It's ridiculous. You should not follow that. The most recent evidence suggests that 3,000 to 6,000 milligrams is fine, of sodium, is fine in most people. Now, let me qualify this by saying if you have some very serious salt-retaining tendency, some people, African Americans, are more likely to have this, people with congestive heart failure and kidney disease. Now, that's outside our basic program, so that salt prescription should still come from your doctor. I'm talking about everyday people without those conditions. Here, 3,000 to 6,000 milligrams of sodium per day is probably the ideal level. Now, here's an interesting question. What about those of us who are either low carb, grain-free, or ketotic, or for that matter, fasting, who lose a lot of sodium in our urine because we don't have sodium retention anymore? The gliadin protein of grains causes sodium retention. High insulin levels in grain-consuming, sugar-consuming people causes sodium retention. Well, we reversed all that, and we lose salt. So we actually can take in more salt than other people. What's not clear is what's the perfect level of sodium intake. Now, a level of 5,000 milligrams of sodium per day is about 2.5 teaspoons of salt per day, sodium chloride. So that's about the roughly ideal level for most people, about 2.5 teaspoons per day. You could count it, your sodium and your sodium chloride. It's kind of a hassle, but you could do that. There are many tables that tell you, and nutritional analysis panels that tell you. Or you just follow a very simple rule. Lightly salt your food with a mineral-rich salt until it tastes good to you. And that, for most of us, works just fine. If you see some evidence of water retention, swelling of your ankles, or higher blood pressure, then you should back off. Another little rule of thumb is if you have some means of tracking your heart rate, particularly starting from the beginning of your program, like a Fitbit or an Apple Watch, or a blood pressure monitor that also gives you a heart rate. Many of the digital scales also give you a heart rate. If your heart rate goes up during your program, let's say you start at 70 beats per minute and it goes up to 84, or you start at 54 because you're a fit athlete and it goes to 63, that's not because you're unfit, it's because you're dehydrated with lack of salt. So watch your resting heart rate, because that can give you a hint that you failed to take in sufficient salt and or water. So basic rule of thumb, salt your food till it tastes good to you, and that for the vast majority of us reflects a sodium intake of about 5,000, 6,000 milligrams per day, a perfectly safe amount.
There you have it. So really simple stuff there. Hey, I mean, there's certainly, when you start to get over your cravings and everything, a lot of our community members find that they don't crave the salts and the sugars and all that sort of thing. And I think what the advice Dr. Davis was giving there was really important. And when you're beginning your program, you actually need the salt. He encouraged you to salt your food and get plenty of trace minerals. He said when you're changing your program and you're dropping the carbohydrates and the chemicals and moving into more of the types of diet that we recommend here in the Savvy team, the Eat Savvy diet, for example, which is also in alignment with Dr. Davis's recommendations. that you actually need more of these minerals. And this is where, for example, I was in the sauna the other day talking to somebody in there about dietary philosophies and all this sort of stuff, and she was saying that because I was talking about the Eat Savvy diet, and she was saying, yes, my sister-in-law had attempted to do a whole food diet, reducing all the processed foods and all that sort of thing, and the family didn't last a week. And I sort of said, okay, well, that part of the problem was, so did they just do it on their own? Yeah, she was just trying to own. Did she take any nutrition? No. So again, that she lacked support and understanding and lacked the nutrition, the additional things such as trace minerals to curb the cravings and all that sort of thing. So if you're going to change your diet and lifestyle and you want to make life easier on yourself, then supplementation makes perfect sense. So what we find is that when people begin on a supplemental regime, such as vitamins and trace minerals and all those sorts of things, we can cut their cravings down. So the dropping of the sugars and the processed foods is just easier. Of course, it still takes discipline, but it's easier. Just as Dr. Davis asserted there, especially when you're beginning your program, it's really important because of the changes that are going on in sodium retention and everything in the body. But you might have noticed that he said it's the gliadin proteins and the carbohydrates and all of these sorts of things that causes the retention of sodium. And so again, we've got to cut the carbs, we've got to cut the grains out, not the salt per se. So this is myth number 3, that we need to cut out all of the sodium if we want to, to be healthier and have a healthier heart. So myth number 4 is to get regular aerobic exercise. Lots of running, jogging, biking, and another funny from Randy Glasbergen here. When your cholesterol gets too high, a sensor will send a signal that automatically locks the kitchen door and turns on the treadmill. So another one here: to prevent a heart attack, take 1 aspirin every day. Take it for a run, take it to the gym, take it for a bike ride, take it everywhere you go. And, there's a certain degree of truth in that. Exercise, lack of physical exercise is a risk factor. But we don't want to swing the pendulum the other way. If you think of a pendulum, like we've got no exercise over here and we just go to running marathons and doing triathlons or biking, it's interesting that I've seen this a lot. Cycling is certainly a very social thing. A lot of 50 plus guys take up extensive cycling. So, for example, which is a very intense cardiovascular, aerobic exercise. And for hours a day. So they might ride for 100 Ks in just hours. And that's what we assert as chronic cardio. Or they might start training for marathons. Do you know that when people decide on a challenge, one of the biggest, I think the biggest time that people take up running a marathon is at age 39. Yep, just before they're about to turn 40. Guess when the next biggest time? 49. The end of every decade, people say, I'm not old, I'm going to run a marathon. And it's the worst thing to do. What you need is intense. You need weight training, you need intense sprint training. All of the evidence that I've seen points more towards that rather than chronic cardio. And this is because of the fact that it just is very stressful to the system. It's an insult. It's the chronic cardiovascular exercise is an insult on the cardiovascular system, and the body doesn't respond well. It jacks up your stress hormones and can lead to further degeneration. So don't get me wrong, exercise is important, but this myth number 4, to get regular aerobic exercise, that's the problem. So let's listen to cardiologist Dr. Stephen Gundry, our next panel member here, and see what he has to say about exercise.
We spoke with well-renowned author and cardiologist Dr. Stephen Gundry of Desert Regional Medical Center to learn what it takes to live heart happy.
A person can absolutely prevent a heart attack. Absolutely. And I wouldn't have believed that 13 years ago when I was a professor and chairman of heart surgery at Loma Linda University. But having met a gentleman back then who reversed most of the disease in his coronary arteries by a diet and taking supplements, and then doing that on tens of thousands of patients since that time, I'm convinced that with proper selection of food, with proper supplements, that anybody, if they are so inclined, can prevent their imminent heart attack.
Dr. Gundry talks about exercise.
One of the really fun things that I have been able to do over the last few years is look at the correlation of exercise and what happens to people's heart muscles, what happens to the inside of their blood vessels. And I have a number of really rather vigorous exercisers who are running 5 and 6 miles a day or doing half marathons on the weekend. And when we do their blood work, we realize that they're actually killing heart cells. And this has actually been established over the last 10 years that running a marathon will kill so many heart cells you can't believe it. And a number of my patients have extensive coronary artery disease and they exercise like maniacs. And when we back off on their exercise program, the damage to the heart begins to go away. Back in the 1950s, very few people had heart disease, despite the fact that 80% of men smoked and about 70% of women smoked. And if you look at any movie from the 1950s, you'll notice that everybody is profoundly thin. They all look like sticks. None of these people were doing marathons. Nobody was going to the gym. They weren't jazzercising. There wasn't PX90. There wasn't Zumba. And yet all these people were stick thin and they didn't have heart disease. And now we're all going to the gym and we're doing all this crazy stuff and everybody's dying like flies from heart disease and nobody's smoking. So you'll have to ask yourself, what happened? What happened is we changed our food.
Dr. Gundry discusses how foods have changed.
We have totally changed how we feed animals. When you were growing up in the 1950s, cows were raised on grass. They went to a stockyard for a couple weeks to fatten up on corn that hadn't been genetically modified. And chickens were out in the back eating bugs and grass. Believe it or not too many people ate chicken, except when the old hen was a stewing hen because she couldn't lay eggs anymore. I grew up on a lot of stewed chicken, but fried chicken was a little unusual. And not too many people were eating a whole lot of pizzas back then. My best advice is stay away from whole grains. They're poisonous. Believe it or not, the less fruit you eat, the healthier you will be. The more fat in the form of olive oil and coconut oil and macadamia nut oil you eat, the healthier you will be. Years ago, I learned from the Italians that the only purpose of food is to bring olive oil into your mouth. And I eat about an 80% fat diet. And the more you skip meals, the healthier you will be. And the best meal to skip is breakfast.
So you might get the picture there, some great information from Dr. Stephen Gundry there, our latest expert on the panel. And there are a few things there, and Dr. Gundry sort of likes to throw out those things that go against the establishment, the medical matrix, as I like to call it there, because he himself is somebody who broke free from the medical matrix, and he's an expert in the area of cardiology. He's invented things, and he was, a very proficient interventional cardiologist and well respected. And as you heard earlier in his session, he didn't believe that you could prevent heart disease. He just thought that there's nothing that you can do. And he had the experience of one particular patient that rocked up on his doorstep saying, "What can you do for me, doc?" And Dr. Gundry said, "I can't operate on you. You'd be too dangerous." So the guy basically goes away and gets himself onto nutrition, vitamins, antioxidants, trace minerals, an impressive nutritional regimen, like our 7 steps for a healthier heart, by the way, and changes his diet. And he comes back and Dr. Gundry says, oh my God, you've progressed so well. Now we can operate. And Dr. Gundry actually said, knowing what I know now, I wouldn't have operated on the guy. I would have continued because his disease was regressing. And so Dr. Gundry now, because he's made that change himself, he likes to throw out all those things that rub you up the wrong way. Like, we're told that we shouldn't skip breakfast. It's the most important meal of the day. And I assert that it is a really good and easy meal to skip, to include intermittent fasting and autophagy into your program. That's what we recommend here in the Savvy team, backed up by people such as Dr. Stephen Gundry. Certainly changing the diet. He said the grains, he backed up Dr. William Davis in saying that grains, he went a bit further. He said that grains are poisonous. So that's the opposite of what the Heart Foundation and every other medical site is recommending. So they're all recommending something that appears to be poisonous when you really delve into it. So something going on here, right? He also talked about, just again the change of our diet and the being thin. So again, we can reduce our risk by losing weight and all that thing. But back to the exercise, which is this myth. He actually saw in patients that if they backed off on their marathons and all that sort of thing, that their vessels healed. And what he's looking at is some of the markers of inflammation that go on. So unfortunately, that sort of intense exercise creates inflammation, and inflammation damages the vessels. So again, too much of a good thing can, exercise is good. Movement is very, very important for the prevention of cardiovascular disease. But when we take it to marathons and when I go to the gym and I'm on there for like 20 minutes and off and jump in the sauna and all that sort of thing, and I see people there for an hour running on the treadmill, that's the sort of thing that isn't so good. Okay, short, sharp burst sprint training, medically proven to assist. Some cardiologists are saying that it's far better even for post-operative repair, more of the sprint training. And by the way, I mentioned saunas. There are studies out of Finland showing that dramatic reduction in cardiovascular disease risk in people who are regular sauna users. So lots of different tips here for you. So definitely want to, myth number 4 is the get regular aerobic exercise. Okay, and this is really, again, the running of marathons. Please understand that lots of walking, biking from a point of view of healthy, fun stuff, and then, doing weights every now and then to really stimulate your muscles, all important, but it's running marathons and doing that can be very damaging. So myth number 5 is all you need to do is eat a balanced diet, and supplements are not necessary. Some people even assert that supplements are a waste of money, and we wholeheartedly disagree. And so would Stephen Gundry there, seeing the fact that he had a patient. The eye-opening situation that happened for him is they had a patient who he could not operate on. The patient went away, did his own research, took a lot of nutrition, changed his diet, and reduced his personal risk. And then Dr. Gundry operated. You're getting the point here. A lot of the times we even have our community members go along to a doctor and the doctor says, show me the evidence. The evidence is not necessarily there because it's very difficult to do these sorts of studies on multiple interventional changes. Studies are all focused on making one change and testing it, one change and testing it. They're not focused on testing a lifestyle modification. But science should be based on what it was originally based on, and that's observational. And so Dr. Gundry is well clued on this. He had a patient who was not in a space where he could be operated on. The guy went away, took supplements, changed his diet, came back and lost weight, all that sort of thing, and said, "Hey doc, I've been taking this bag of supplements and I'm now feeling much better, and how am I going?" And Dr. Gundry was amazed. So that's what they call in science N equals 1. The number of people in the study was 1. But there was clear before and after clinical evidence. So, and many doctors are also duped by the science. The science is so misinterpreted that, we've just been bamboozled by a lot of this stuff because of industry and, drug companies and the food industry and all that sort of thing. So again, if you're told, show me the double-blind placebo-controlled studies on diet and supplements, you can't do those sorts of studies. You can't do those sorts of studies because it's what they call a multi-interventional. There's too many parameters to be able to check it against. But if you get before and after evidence, then it's factual. Like if I tell you there's no such thing as a black sheep, and you find a black sheep, we do not need to do double-blind placebo-controlled studies because there it is, observation. So if you change your lifestyle and you get results, there it is. There it is right there. So getting me started here, hey? So anyway, this is myth number 5. All you need is a balanced diet. Supplements are not necessary. So much, we hear this so often. A little bit of a funny here from regarding dietary change here from Randy Glasbergen. It's normal for a man of your age to have chest pains when he drips hot melted pizza cheese on his shirt. And then the Cooking Monster here. This'll be your 4th triple bypass surgery in the past 2 years. It's time to start rethinking your diet, Cookie Monster. Well, I would agree, but the thing that I'm challenging here in this myth, and so are many cardiologists, is that all you need is a balanced diet. That is simply false, especially when evidence from the National Health and Medical Research Council says that fewer than 10% of Australians actually met the guidelines for vegetable consumption. So to assert that all we need is a balanced diet when nobody's even getting anywhere near what's considered a balanced diet is ludicrous. So if we don't get there through a diet, then sensible supplementation makes logical sense, right? So, anyway. So, and certainly, if we think about what we heard from Dr. Walker before, Dr. Ross Walker certainly is somebody who believes in nutrition, and he talked about this. I shared this quote from him before about coronary artery bypass grafting, or for example stents or anything, is a temporary procedure. You've got to get your life in order. So what have we got to do to get our life in order? Well, we believe that nutrition makes logical sense. Just like you nourish a tree and all of the branches of a tree through giving it good nutrition into the soil, then it's the same thing for us too. We need to nourish the systems of our body by all of the right nutrients. Okay, so good light, good water, but all of the nutrients such as trace and macro minerals, vitamins, antioxidants, amino acids, essential fatty acids, and of course creating a healthy gut ecosystem and, decreasing chemical exposure. When you think about raising a healthy plant, you get rid of the poisons and you nourish the soil with minerals and nutrients. And then the tree performs well. You protect it away from bugs. It's the same thing. We've got to protect ourselves from parasites and bugs. We've got to decrease chemical exposure. We've got to increase supplementation. Either, like what do we do with the plant? We either change the soil or we fertilize it. Well, if we assert that our diet is like the soil and we don't change our diet that much, then we can keep the plant thriving by supplementing it with fertilizer. Well, that's what nutrition is for us. If you're not going to change the soil significantly, your diet, then supplementation is even wiser. But what if we change the soil and fertilize the plant? Nurserymen know that that's the way to grow plants that sell, and we assert here in the Savvy team that that's the way for you to thrive as well. So let's listen to the next cardiologist on our panel, and this is eminent cardiologist here in Australia, Dr. Ross Walker, talking about the power of nutrition.
Sydney Heart Image is a leading clinic that assesses patients for possible heart disease. The clinic's director is the internationally renowned cardiologist, Dr. Ross Walker.
Nutrition is a vital area in terms of preventative cardiology, and in fact, if you look at our society basically has severe atherosclerotic disease and a lot of forms of cancer as well, because of the nutrition that we have and also other environmental problems. These days we are living in a chemical world. From the second we wake up in the morning to the second we go to bed at night, we are being exposed to chemicals. All you need to do is go outside and breathe in a major city and you are taking thousands of toxic chemicals into your body. So we are being exposed to so many of these environmental chemicals from all sorts of sources, in our food, in the air, in the water, in the things we put on our body, in the things we take into our body. And what happens with these chemicals, the final common pathways, they generate these nasty particles called free radicals. Now, free radicals are chemicals that lack electrons. So they run around the body craving stability, looking for electrons in your blood vessels or in your DNA, therefore setting you up for heart disease and cancer. So we really have to be doing two things. One, reducing our exposure to these toxins, and two, increasing our antioxidant, vitamin, mineral, trace metal regimen to cope with the toxins. If you want optimum health, if you really want to take those extra years and have them good quality years, I believe in this day and age, with all of the environmental toxins we're being exposed to, that we need extra help from supplementation.
And so that's what we agree with Dr. Walker there, and obviously we're in the wellness arena where supplements we do believe are important. And so for general prevention and nourishing your body and everything, we have some different plans that we call the Savvy 90. Which is all around, that focus on the 90 nutrients that our body needs each and every day, made up of things such as vitamins and macro minerals, as well as trace minerals, antioxidants, essential fatty acids, and even we include green superfoods in there for detoxification and alkalization. And so this is an example of our core plan made up of 5 different nutritional supplements. And we do have a basics plan for those on a tighter budget, and an ultimate plan for those who want really that enhanced support. But there's no doubt that we want, that eating a really healthy diet, moving to the eat savvy approach is important, but we also assert that supplements are beneficial, as you heard from Dr. Ross Walker as well there. So myth number 5 is that supplements are not necessary. We certainly do believe that they are. So what I wanted to share with you now is Dr. Ross Walker. That leads us to the fact that here in Australia, Dr. Ross Walker was actually, when you saw that, you saw a picture in that particular video of somebody going through actually a CT scan machine. And Dr. Walker was one of the early adopters here in Australia, really introducing the technology of calcium scoring, coronary artery calcium scoring, to Australia. So we certainly respect his information there. And here's what he had to say about this. And obviously he was a pioneer in this particular region of the world before it was as fashionable as it is now. Not that it's fashionable, it's still not recommended by most GPs. And so that's why I'm here really to talk to you about how you can assess your real risk. And so Dr. Walker said that a coronary calcium score is the best predictive test for heart disease risk. Your cholesterol is not the best predictive test. Myth number 1. Your blood pressure is not the best predictive test. The first myth that we went through. The coronary calcium score is the best way for you to see if you're going to drop. It's the best way you're going to see if you're going to drop dead of a heart attack. He's another cardiologist that likes to sort of throw some curlies out there. So the actual coronary artery calcium score can give you a visual representation of calcium buildup within your actual coronary artery vessels. And some experts actually say that all it is, this is only valuable if the typical risk assessment, because at the moment they see that a whole portion of the population are actually at risk for heart attack, but are not picked up in the typical standards. There's a gray area because they pass all of the tests. Some people even pass their stress tests. Their cholesterol's normal, their blood pressure's under control. They pass a stress test and they still have a heart attack. And so many people believe that it's just for those people, where we assert that it's for everyone. Everyone can know their risk by simply paying for the test themselves, because it's not covered on most of the, it's not covered as far as I know anywhere on any Medicare anywhere. So it is a fee service. But what's great is that where it used to cost thousands of dollars, it's now come down in price. And if you're in the Brisbane region, reach out to us and we'll put you in touch with the place that doesn't need a referral here and is the best place in Brisbane as far as we can see and our understanding for doing this particular coronary artery calcium scoring. So let me just share with you a video that explains what it's about, and then you'll know. And if you're coming to us from a region other than Australia, then just have a look. Google coronary artery calcium scoring, and if you have your score, definitely book a free discovery session, a how can we help session with one of our wellness guides, and we can discuss some of the ways of you being able to do something about that. Because there's lots of things that you can do to reverse atherosclerotic plaque. Now, typically they say that if you just slow it, so with the coronary artery calcium score, if you just stop it in its tracks, stop progression, so year after year after year, if it goes no further, that has been a major step forward. Okay, so don't feel bad if you're slowing the progression or stopping it in its tracks is a major step forward. But it can be regressed, but not by just your average poking at things with a stick. You're only going to get over that disease by some serious interventional dietary changes and things like that. So you can't just poke it with a stick if you want to get healthier. All right, let's check out this video on coronary artery calcium scoring.
Imagine having a 5-minute test that can give you a good idea whether you'll have heart disease. It's called coronary artery calcium scoring, or CACS.
Based on the patient's age and sex, tell them with a reasonable degree of certainty what their likelihood of coronary artery disease in the next 5 years is.
We'll hook up 3 electrodes to their chest. We'll slide them up into the scanner. We take a total of 2 pictures. They're very quick and easy.
Hold your breath.
The CT scan sees hard plaque. That's what becomes calcified and can damage your heart.
This big thing right here, this is the mitral valve, and it's calcified.
CDI radiologist Dr. Stephen Foley looks for calcifications on this CACS scan.
One of the markers for heart disease is calcification within the blood vessel. And so with a non-invasive 5-minute test, we can actually measure how much calcification you have in your coronary arteries in your heart.
The best candidates for CACS have 1 or more heart disease risk factors, including high cholesterol, significant hypertension, long-term diabetes, or a family member who has had a heart attack.
Self-pay, it's not something that's covered by insurance. It's less than $150 to basically find out what you're looking at with your heart.
You'll get results within 7 to 10 days. And based on the scan, you can make the decision to change your diet, activity level, or even consider statin drugs.
It's a great idea. It's a very proactive exam, and the patients know that, and it's a very low-cost exam, so they can just call and schedule it themselves and usually get in very quickly.
So really, really powerful thing to do, especially if you're already have some of the risk factors, those sorts of things. So if you're concerned, if heart disease is in your family, if you have some of the other risk factors, then $150 is an investment in your health that's worthwhile. Then it's not about getting scared about it, but it's about doing something about that. Okay, it's better to know the risk that's there than to pretend nothing's happening. So the great thing is that the place that we recommend will be able to give you results on the day and have a discussion with you. So far better than what you heard on that particular video. So that's here in Brisbane, but obviously wherever you're coming in from, you'll want to look at getting a calcium score done. And by the way, don't listen to any ridiculous stuff about about radiation. If you really, obviously any test has exposure to radiation, but that's like saying, well, don't fly ever again. Make sure you're turning off all of your mobile phones and Wi-Fi at nighttime. Don't live in a normal environment. Certainly don't live in a steel reinforced building. There's lots of things that we can do to reduce our exposure to radiation and electromagnetic interference, but avoiding a test is not a particularly wise thing to do. So don't worry about that. Don't listen to anyone who might come up with negative things about that. All right, so that's the coronary artery calcium scoring. And really, ultimately when we look at all of this, as I've said before, that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Indeed, it's more like an ounce of prevention is worth a ton of intervention. So if you obviously doing all of the dietary things to prevent illness is the wise thing to do. And so getting a score done can help you to know where you're at. But then we've got to focus on a wellness paradigm to take you to that high level of wellness. So when we really then think about all of this, you say, well, okay, Corey, you've gone through all of these things. You've presented all of these experts on the panel here and the myths. What really is going on? How do I prevent cardiovascular disease? Well, the latest research, and you've heard it mentioned by a couple of the experts there, but the latest research shows that it's insulin resistance. So even Thomas Dayspring, world-renowned lipidologist and clinical assistant professor of medicine at and director of cardiovascular education, said that in reality, the majority of heart attacks are due to insulin resistance. And so this is from basically a high carb diet, leads to high blood sugar, leads to high insulin release, leads to excess sugar moving into fat storage, leads to a drop in sugar and fatigue and hunger, and then increased food consumption, and then more weight. And so it becomes a little bit of a chicken and egg scenario here, which came first, the chicken or the egg. But insulin resistance, not cholesterol, not high blood pressure, insulin resistance, too many carbohydrates. So what have we got to do? Cut the carbs. Consider the Eat Savvy diet. Follow, mellow out. Cut your cortisol level. Certainly improve your exercise. Maybe consider more of a higher fat ketosis type of diet. Put in a little bit of fasting. Skip snacks. Don't snack between meals. Support your nutrient needs so that you don't get the cravings. Detox your body and get rid of endocrine disruptors can be a wise thing as well. And remove sugar, added sugar. Remove even some of the non-calorie sweeteners that can stimulate hunger. Insulin resistance, low carb. You might have heard Dr. Gundry before said, I eat an 80% fat diet. And you may go, how is that possible? He's referring to by calories, not that there would be 80% of the volume of the food was in fats, but it's the calories. Because, per gram, fats are more energy dense than carbohydrates or protein. So when you include a lot of things like avocado and oil and those sorts of things like olive oil and the natural oils on your food and everything, it's very easy for you to then be eating a lot more fat. So insulin resistance. And by the way, when you increase your fat, content in your diet, you're going to be more, and protein, you're going to be more satiated, so you're not as likely to crave the carbohydrates. But in that initial balancing point, nutrition makes a huge difference, because many people don't make it through the change and through the cravings and all that sort of thing, because they're neglecting nutrition. So in reality, the majority of heart disease is simply insulin resistance. So in fact, many years ago, Dr. Joseph Kraft found that through looking at insulin assays, looking at the way that insulin responds in most people, he said that people with atherosclerotic issues, heart disease, who are not already diagnosed with diabetes, are simply not properly diagnosed. So if you have any cardiovascular issues, then chances are you're pre-diabetic. And so we need to cut the carbohydrates. This is all because we've been, over the last 50 years, we've been told to avoid fat, and we've been on all the healthy whole grains and eating far too much sugar and fruit and these sorts of things. So when we look at back to what cardiologist Dr. Mark Houston, a very well-respected professional who lectures to doctors, said is the thing that we call heart disease is actually the natural response to the insults on the blood vessel. Inflammation, oxidative stress, and immune dysfunction. So our strategic bet is that we must turn off the insults. We must turn off the insults. And so, you know, as I said before, your body, you ate deep fried food and your body says, I didn't really like that. And so it's oxidative stress and inflammation happens there. Or you eat loads of sugar and your body says, I didn't really like that. Or, you know, you have leaky gut because your gut health is not in order and bacteria are getting into your bloodstream, and your vessels go, I didn't really like that. And so over time, if you don't correct the issue, the inner area of your artery, the endothelium, becomes damaged. And so we need to go back and remove the insult, not squash back the plaque or do bypasses, although that may save your life, but we need to remove the insults. Now, another thing is Dr. Mark Houston says that if you have erectile dysfunction, ED, that's caused by ED, endothelial dysfunction. So if you have erectile dysfunction, gentlemen, any gentlemen out there, it's another warning sign of cardiovascular breakdown. So it's, rather than trying to do anything with medications there, it's a good idea for you to correct the underlying causes of the disease so that you prevent a heart attack, not just other issues. So if you're wanting to make changes, we really encourage you to follow the Eat Savvy diet. We have 12 steps to help you get started on the Eat Savvy diet on the blog. If you want to take things to the next level, then I would encourage you to take our Healthy Heart Challenge. And so follow what we call our Healthy Heart Challenge, which is really a 3 to 6 month challenge, you know, really getting into the 7 healthy heart action steps that we cover in our masterclass, and just see what happens. Many people come out of their Healthy Heart Challenge saying that they feel more energy, that their skin improves, that they feel clearer in their brain, that they don't have foggy thinking. They even feel like they can go and exercise. So the Healthy Heart Challenge is just something that people do sometimes as a precaution once a year. Others sort of do it because they're wondering about some of the symptoms there, but it's a good detoxifying general nutritional saturation program anyway. So certainly is a benefit to absolutely everyone. Then, really, following the easy as 1, 2, 3 philosophy is just the general thing that you might want to do. And so that's, really, as we say, decrease toxin exposure, increase nutrition, and optimize the body systems. Easy as 1, 2, 3. And if you want, again, as I mentioned earlier, if you want to delve into this issue and those 3 things, inflammation, oxidative stress, and immune dysfunction of the vessels, then we covered that more in depth in episode 28. So you can have a look at episode 28 of the Healthy, Wealthy, Wise show. we covered what your doctor may not tell you about preventing heart disease. We have a free masterclass on the 7 steps for a healthier heart, so I would encourage you to take a look at that, where we go through some of the nutritional things that we use in the Healthy Heart Challenge. So it's a good resource for you there as well. And one of the other things I wanted to mention is the benefit of improving your collagen levels and your collagen synthesis in terms of cardiovascular risk, because most people today, because collagen is something that is but often only promoted from the point of view of the skin, many people don't realize the value of improving collagen synthesis throughout the body. So it's implicated in oral health, in reducing periodontal disease, in eye health and the central nervous system, in healthy hair, skin, nails. Obviously, that's where most people think is the only area of benefit. Cardiovascular system and internal organ health, gut health as well, and then joint, bone, muscle, and connective tissue health as well. And so here in the Savvy team, we do highly recommend processes such as having bone broths and all that sort of thing to get the raw ingredients for collagen synthesis into the body. But we also are involved with high-tech supplements that really help to, that are bio-optimized and help you to get the levels of collagen and hyaluronic acid in your body up and have been seen to increase that collagen synthesis. So there you have it. That's been the 5 healthy heart myths busted by cardiologists. So we want to get you to focus on the right healthy heart action steps, not those myths. So make a move away from following those myths to more of the 7 steps for a healthy heart that we promote here in the Savvy team. And I just encourage you to really join us on this healthy heart movement. Join us on the movement where we can really spread the message of the real things, the root causes of cardiovascular disease, so that we can help so many other people around us. For your best wellness journey, you'll want a plan, you'll want some solutions, you'll want guidance, and you'll want community. And that's what we do here in the Savvy team. So request an invitation, join our community, let us know how can we help you. Is it not heart health? Is it something else that's your top priority? Whatever it is, if you can tell us what you want, we can show you how to move towards it. So if you have any questions about the information we've covered here in these 5 healthy heart myths, then definitely reach out to us. We'll be glad to help. If you're already working with one of our Savvy team wellness guides, then they can help you and guide you along the way as well. But no doubt, if you want to improve something about your health and wellness, then we can guide you there. So look, congratulations for being with us on these 5 healthy heart myths busted by cardiologists. Love to hear your thoughts and whether there's anything in particular that you'd like to know more about. So congratulations for being with us for this particular part of the show. So if you have just joined recently, Corey Sievers here with the Savvy team on the Healthy, Wealthy, Wise show, and we are moving on to the next part of the show, the Wealthy and Wise part. And we're going to be talking about organization. Yep. And as you know, we help you enjoy improved health and lifestyle. So we're going to be talking about not only the benefits of being organized from the point of view of mental clarity, but we're actually going to talk about the benefits from a health point of view. So moving from chaos to freedom, 10 benefits of being organized, getting your life in order. So sometimes when we talk about getting organized, it's sort of like, that's not me. That's just, some people are just anal and all that sort of thing. Actually, the more you're able to put things in place. So if you're not somebody who's naturally organized, my desk does not look particularly good. But if you're not somebody who's naturally organized, there's a tremendous freeing and clarity that can be gained from getting order. Okay. And so order is the first law of the universe, after all. So I'm going to go through these 10 benefits of being organized and introduce you to an amazing interview with a lady by the name of Asha Tyson. And you're going to want to hear that. It's fun. And then I want to come back and talk about some of the things that we've learned about wellness breakthrough that happens when you create more order in your life. Yes, indeed, you can have a breakthrough in your health and wellness when you actually start focusing on improving the order in your life. So number one in these 10 benefits of being organized is that you'll upgrade your brain's ability to function. If you take all of the work-related stuff and life-related stuff in your head and get it down into a trusted system, then it's amazing. Wonderful things can begin to happen. And I love David Allen, author of the GTD philosophy, Getting Things Done, How to Get Things Done is what the book's called here in this region of the world. But he says your mind is for having ideas, not holding them. And often we feel overwhelmed because we're trying to remember everything. We don't have trusted systems in place to make sure that things don't get lost or forgotten or whatever. And so that's why you feel overwhelmed, because you don't have systems in place. And so having a trusted system, even if that's as simple as what I call a day book, or you might call it the bullet journal, is one methodology of having just a basic low-tech book to track things. If you don't have systems in place to track the things that you're working on and projects, etc., then you're going to feel more overwhelmed. So it's going to upgrade your brain's ability to function. Number two is that you're going to reduce your stress levels. You're going to reduce the overwhelm levels, and you're going to gain more clarity. When you have all of your tasks and notes and ideas down in one trusted resource, then there's nothing to really worry about. You've essentially sort of liberated your mind from all the stress and overwhelm and trying to remember the things, and you can be more creative, more in the moment, less stressed out and overwhelmed. So that may be as simple as just getting a book and going, right, what's on my mind right now? And just get it out of your mind and onto paper. And then say, what's the next logical step here? So if something's troubling you right now, grab a piece of paper, write what it is at the top. And then just say, all right, is there anything that I can do about that? If that's no, then put it aside. There's nothing you can do about it. If you go, well, yeah, there's a whole bunch of things I can do. What's the next logical step? Do that. Simple. So, you know, my original teacher in the health and healing sphere, I'll share with you this quote later on, but I think it's worthwhile going here when I'm talking about what's the next logical step. The quote that he shared, that he said he received through prayer and meditation, was to search for things beyond our grasp is fantasy, when that which lies within our reach we see has not yet been completed, yet holds the key to that which through right action ours will be. The simplest things in life will set us free. So all that's saying is that if there is a logical step for you to take and you're not doing it, what's the use of wishing for things to be easier and simpler when you haven't taken the next logical step? That's searching for things beyond our grasp. If there's something right there to be done, do it. Move forward. That will move you forward. With the movement forward with those simple things will create momentum and help you feel amazing clarity anyway. So that was number two. You'll reduce stress, overwhelm, and gain more clarity. Number three, you're likely to advance in your career or business, or simply be more productive. Because the more ordered and organized you are, you're going to stop wasting time on all the things that aren't actually meaningful in your life. And you're going to probably start to focus on more of the impactful things, the things that break you through to the next level. And like David Allen says, that in this day and age, we're all knowledge workers of some sort. So we have to have a way of categorizing and collating and keeping all of the knowledge that's coming at us in some way, or otherwise we do all become overwhelmed. And you know, when you do have more of a trusted process there and everything, you can start to focus more on the productive things, getting more done with less stress, and feeling better about yourself too. So we often see in people that have worked with us to, in our Savvy Home Business division, where we help people develop income streams in the wellness industry. And, a lot of people have become overwhelmed because, they take this on alongside whatever else they're currently doing. And so we've seen people give up on their dreams of creating a better lifestyle for their family just because of the overwhelm. And they go, I just need to take a break because I'm too overwhelmed. And the break doesn't help, because when you come back, all of the existing broken systems that led to the overwhelm are still there. So if you change nothing, nothing changes. So rather than step back, what you need to do is step forward into organization, into clarity, into making those changes. And that will develop more of a self-fulfilling momentum, really, because of that forward movement in your life. We've seen that. In fact, it's the number one thing I'll share with you later. My original mentor in the health and healing field actually found that helping a person create order in their life was the number one step to take, even before physical body care and changes, because when their life was disordered, they didn't heal. This is again coming back to holistic wellness. It's so important to healing to get your life in order, to get organized, to get your home in order, to not have disorganized parts of your life or areas that are draining you because you need to make amends. So more on that soon. Number 4 is you're going to feel more motivated. It develops a momentum in and of itself, and success brings further success and momentum, and you actually feel like you're moving forward on things. Just knowing the action steps makes you feel like there's that forward momentum. Getting organized makes you feel better. Sometimes it actually becomes fun. So number 5 is you're going to have more time. It's really simple. The more productive you are, the less you're shuffling through stuff and wasting time. The more organized you are, the more time you will create for yourself, because you're not redoing tasks. You're not running around like a chook with its head cut off, as they say, trying to find things. You just can go to it. You do it in more of a relaxed manner, and then you're more productive too when you're in that space. So I recognize this, for example, with doing the show. If things go awry, the more organized I am, the easier it is for me to present here in a relaxed manner. Whereas when things go awry or something happened and I didn't get the chance to do something, it's all of a mad scramble and you just don't feel as good in the process. So the more you can set things up so that you have the time and the order there to be able to get the things done, the better you're going to feel about it, the better you're going to perform, and the better the results are going to be in the end too. So you'll feel more motivated and you'll definitely have more time. So number 6 is you'll likely make more money, because time is money, and the more organized you are, the more things that you can focus on what's really important, and you can make a significant change in your productivity. So number 7, you're likely to perform at your highest potential, because there's not all the clutter. There's not all the emotional baggage dragging you down. So if you get organized, you could achieve a lot more, because you're not limiting yourself with disorder or wasting time trying to find things, or just the emotional drain of uncompleted tasks. Right now, there's probably something on your mind that's not written down in a trusted system that's draining you of your presence in the now. Get it on paper. Say, can I do anything about it now? And if you can't do anything about it now, make sure you remind yourself to do it when you can do something about it. Simple. That's what the getting things done philosophy is all about. So how many of you, so the book GTD, highly recommend it. And look, it's heavy going. If you're not really of an organized kind of person, you might find it heavy going. But the results, when you get your life in order, will, you'll have more fun. So for those of you who are fun-loving people, like to enjoy the good times and everything, you're not really an organized, you're a people person, you're out there, and you think, I don't care about organization, you're going to have more fun. if you if you get organized, you'll likely perform at your highest potential. You'll be more creative. You'll be able to enjoy more time with people. So don't ever use the excuse that I'm not an organized kind of person. Number 8 is you'll likely be able to achieve your goals more easily. All of the benefits that we've just talked about work together to really give you that freedom to move forward in your life. Number 9, you're likely to enjoy your work more and your life more because it's less drama, there's less baggage. You're doing things without the stress. And number 10, you're likely to begin to heal on many levels. And this is where my original mentor found that if, we obviously recommended nutrient saturation and certain procedures to help a person heal, emotional release types of things. But one of the things that he found is that just beginning on a process called the list, where we begin to actually take note of the things that are on our mind and just progress through them one by one, seeing what we can do, getting them off our list, created such forward momentum that it actually helped people heal. So if you've been struggling with some health issues, for example, and you're on nutritional programs, you've taken some of the first steps, nutrient saturation, you're working with us on changing your diet and following the Eat Savvy diet, getting onto nutritional supplementation, and if you haven't been getting the results that you really want, then it may be worthwhile considering where are you disordered in life and using the process that we call the list. And we do have a download that we can send you that we put together for our community members many years ago when we were doing personal development like seminars. And so that's available, so you can reach out to us and ask for the list process. And this helps you to really bring order back into your life and feel like you're getting forward momentum on organizing. And I'm raising this because we have seen, and my mentor saw that people healed on multiple levels when they started to be on a nutritional program and then create order in their life. And I'll go through some of that order in just a moment. But what I wanted to do first is actually introduce you to Asha Tyson and an interview with this particular lady who became a motivational speaker, had a very traumatic upbringing. We won't be going into that, but her mother had sickle cell anemia and schizophrenia, and so she had a very traumatic upbringing, but that all those experiences led to her becoming a motivational speaker and just really helping people to tackle the circumstances in life and see what you can do to move forward. So this is a bit of a longer segment than we usually share, but I just felt like it was very valuable for you to hear this. I always find a lot of value in this. It's quite fun too. So we'll be introducing you to Asha Tyson. And this particular quote here too, I think you'll particularly love when you hear it. And it's, "Whatever you don't handle with grace will stay in your face." So let's have a listen to Asha Tyson.
So now there could be some people listening right now and they're probably thinking, okay, you've been through all these challenges in your life. You've been able to bounce back and make things happen. They may be in a situation where they have difficult circumstances, whether or not those difficult circumstances are dealing with the parental type situations, or it could be, spousal type situations, children, or just relationships in general, just difficult challenges, the IRS or the government could be on their back.
Right.
It's a variety of things. How do you cope? Because I was reading your book and I know you have a whole chapter talking about coping with difficult circumstances.
Yes.
So how do you cope with difficult circumstances? What kind of advice can you give to people, especially with all the difficult circumstances that you've coped with in your life?
Exactly. The key word is accountability.
Mm.
The number one way to start to cope with a circumstance is to fully embrace it and be with it. It's happening. A lot of people become frustrated and we become uneasy with what's happening with us. And it is just that sense of disease, disease that creates disease.
Right,
Look how that
dis-ease, right?
Exactly. But what's interesting about that is the more you embrace, here's what I'm dealing with. Okay, the issue is at hand. What has this come to teach me? When you shift how you're looking at it, it's like trying to make a jacket that is already too small for you. You know you're not comfortable. You're trying to make it fit. It's not getting any bigger because we're wiggling. You know, the jacket is too small, so now maybe can I repurpose this jacket? Is there something else I could be doing other than trying to wear this jacket? Could I possibly give it away? So the question becomes, how do you take the circumstance that you have and see the value in it? See what it's teaching you. See if it's teaching you to teach someone else. See if it's come to give you a skill that you wouldn't have had that could otherwise take you to another level. See the jacket for the size that it is, as opposed to being angry that it's not what you want it to be.
And then focus on what you can do to increase the size of it. If you
focus on what you can do to increase. Hey, maybe the skill you learned from dealing with the circumstance at hand provides you the kind of income to get new jackets.
That's right.
You see what I mean? Maybe this isn't to be used the way you had hoped it would be. It's in your face, though. And whatever you don't handle with grace will stay in your face.
Ooh, listen to that. Let's say that again.
Whatever you don't handle with grace will stay in your face. You'll see it. It'll come again. Next time it'll come, it's going to be a pair of pants. They're going to be too tight. You're trying to pull them up and zip them and work them, and oh, my goodness.
You don't want it to ever come as a straight jacket.
Oh, my goodness. That's good. Yeah, straight jacket, yeah.
So, in other words, you better get to the point that you get with handling it with grace.
You got to handle it with grace.
Because it'll continue to stay in your face, and it'll get worse and worse and worse. It'll come in different varieties, different ways. Exactly,
same animal. It'll be the same demon, just meeting you at different parks.
Ooh, same demon at different parks. Wow, she did not go to Disney World. Did she go to Disney World? Six Flags? She went to all great, oh my goodness, that is something
else. It'd be the same thing. Same thing, just reheated over and over. It's like the same soup, eat it over and over again. You got to handle it. And the question becomes, even when it's not, and here's the tricky part, even when it's not something you created, like my life. I didn't give my mom sickle cell anemia. I didn't make her schizophrenic. I didn't give my father the sense of irresponsibility. These aren't things I created. I didn't behave my way into these circumstances.
So
I was born into them.
You didn't create that for them.
But I still had to embrace it and handle and deal with the deck of cards I was dealt.
Because you could have fought it the whole time,
saying I didn't deserve these cards.
More frustrated, and then you would have been more of a victim.
Exactly.
And then you would have been blaming, and you probably would have never got to the point to where you were able to take accountability and responsibility for your own situation, for where you are, and move forward.
I could have become a narcissist, and everybody's life has to revolve around me because I didn't get what I needed as a kid. So now everybody needs to jump through hoops and give me what I need. All kinds of things.
Right.
All kinds of things. All because of the embracing. I then was able to be free.
Powerful. You embraced it.
Embraced it. These were the circumstances. Now, how do I make this life, the one that I had, work for me? Not, this shouldn't have been my life.
So embrace with grace, and it'll get out of your face.
Bam. There it is.
Now, Asha, one of the things that people ask me quite a bit, I think people just want to get to the bottom line. They want to cut to the chase, and they want to know, what is the number one ingredient of success, or what are some of the top ingredients of success? Bottom line, I want to know, what does it take to be successful? And I remember reading a chapter on success. You were talking about an ingredient or number one ingredient or something.
Yes.
Can you tell us about, from your perspective, what do you feel is the number one ingredient of success, or what are some ingredients of success, whichever way you want to take it?
Number one ingredient to success, what it means to just have wrapped your brain around, I'm doing this for myself and I will not be stopped. First thing you got to do is get organized. The number one ingredient to success is order. And Jerry, it's just this simple. You cannot be a good soldier when you can't find your weapons. No, and I had them around it. Now, wait a minute. What do you mean they're coming? Have you seen my loaded gun? Meanwhile, life is happening and the people are, you have to be prepared. You can't be prepared if you can't put your hands on the things that make you successful. You have to have access to your tools. You got to know where they are. It's real spiritual to clear things out and create an energy of space so that you can be creative.
It's like creating a vacuum.
Creating a vacuum.
You can be more creative.
Exactly. So you have to clear things out.
So it's clearing out a lot of the clutter then,
Got to get the clutter out. An entire chapter on how to get organized. No junk drawers. What do you mean junk drawers? That drawer could be holding something that could take me to the next level. A lot of people say, there's a method to the madness. My question, Jerry, is why is there any madness at all?
Ooh, that's right.
Yeah. How much more effective could you be if the madness was gone? I mean, if you're really, because there are a lot of people who can get a lot of stuff done with madness. Oh, but how much more?
If it was gone,
oh, my goodness.
So when you say order, you're talking about not only the physical clutter that's around.
Sure.
Are you talking about the mental clutter as well? In other words,
well, what's
not being
interesting,
focused and so forth?
Not being what's interesting is they go hand in hand. You'll notice that when you are cluttered in your life, a woman, they've done studies that a woman's purse is symbolic to what she's thinking. I mean, how disarrayed the items are in her purse is symbolic to where she is emotionally. So you can start from the outside in on this one. This is a beautiful thing you can do today.
That was a good tip for the guys, by the way. If they're ever going out on a
hey,
date.
you're going on a date, check out the purse.
Yeah.
Baby, what you got in the purse?
Yeah, let me see that purse. Oh, no. Too much
see, that's why I don't carry one. Yeah, but that's the thing. Absolutely. It will be symbolic. Your home. Notice, when you start to straighten up a little bit, it's generally because you've solved a problem. And now your outsides are going to match whatever's going on internally.
That's right.
So here's an opportunity. What if emotionally you're feeling disarrayed, but that's a little harder to decipher? It's a little harder to get, but we're talking about some now steps. So what you can do right now, you can go clean up. right now. Sometimes we have to do physically, Jerry, and let our hearts and minds catch up. See, you really don't have to feel like getting on the treadmill to make your legs work. You know, your legs get you on the treadmill without your brain and your heart catching up to why you're there.
But if you do it on a
behave your
basis,
way into it.
Next thing
there
you know,
it is.
And you start getting into it.
You get into it.
Whether it's that or whether it's whatever it is, like you're saying, is that you can behave your way. A lot of people want to wait until they feel comfortable and feel good and feel like they want to do it. And what you're saying is that you might not never feel like you want to do it.
You may not feel like it.
And then next thing you know, you're never transforming that area of your life.
Exactly.
You know, the physical or if it's a spiritual
it's not
situation
required.
or mental or whatever it is.
Filling up to it isn't required to have the life you want. You don't have to feel up to it.
All right, so powerful stuff there. Whatever you don't handle with grace will stay in your face. So embrace it with grace and it'll get out of your face. So some great tips there and really, really, I think impactful and matching up with the things that I learned in my early 20s through my health mentor, when what Asha was saying there is that it's very, you know, your physical, you can begin with things in your physical environment and then that helps you heal on the other levels. And that's exactly in alignment with one of the things that our mentor used to say, and that's that the physical is a springboard to the mental. So, you know, a lot of people are so focused on, you know, they're focused on the mental changes. I want to do all the emotional journey work and all that sort of thing, yet they haven't dealt with the fundamentals. And what our teacher found is that it was the external was a springboard. Getting nutritional supplementation and healing your body was a springboard to emotional and mental changes and success in life. That cleaning the clutter up around your life and getting order in your life was a springboard to changing the rest of your life. And that's really what Asha Tyson was saying as well. So I saw a powerful similarity there. So what can we do then to be able to bring these things together? Well, the list process that we were taught from our original wellness mentor, Dr. John Whitman Ray, was to really, you know, it was like a clearing clutter for clarity and for actual life change. And this was to write down all of your goals and desires, to get them out of your head and onto paper. So if you've had the desire, get them out of your head, put them down on a list. What are these things that you've really wished you could have and experience in life? Put them on paper. So that's the typical goal setting process. Write them down. Because then you can say, right, what's the next logical step I can do towards these things? Okay? Because otherwise you're just wishing and hoping. Number 2 was to write down what you feel are your responsibilities. Okay? So, you know, I feel like I've got to do this, and I feel like I've got to do this, I feel like I've got to do this, I'm responsible for this. Great. Know your responsibilities, but know whether there's any action to be taken. Because if there's no action to be taken, don't keep it in your mind and have it zap your energy levels because you're worried about these responsibilities. Just know, what do I need to do on that? Number three was the uncompleted acts, and this is the junk drawers and the disordered areas around around your home and in your life that Asher was really talking about there, and that can really move you forward. You just have a think about it. If there's been something that's been bugging you for a long time, like an area or a corner of the garage, or the fact that you haven't washed the car for some time, and then you finally do it, you feel different about yourself because you've finally broken through and moved forward on something. That's that springboard, that the physical action is a springboard to changing the way you feel, and that has even vibratory impact on all of the things that are going on for you in your life. And number 4 is perhaps a difficult one, and that's the areas to make amends. This is all the list process. We do have a document on this that not a particularly, just a short cheat sheet really on this that we gave to people in our personal growth seminars. But so goals and desires, responsibilities, uncompleted acts, and areas to make amends. So if you fit now, the areas to make amends, like do you feel like you did something wrong at some point, or you upset someone, or you offended someone, or whatever? Put it down, write it down, get it out of your head. You're wanting to get it out of your emotional space so that it's not draining you of energy. And again, you're just thinking, what's the next logical step? Is there anything for me to do here? If there's nothing that you can do there, the very fact that you've written it down could simply lead to opportunities to clear the air on that. Sometimes you write down, oh, I did this and everything, and then you deal with something, or you don't even deal with it. Sometimes the opportunity comes up. Like, let's say that you had a misunderstanding with someone and you wrote it down, I'd like to clear that up at some time, and then suddenly the universe sort of presents you with the opportunity to have that open conversation, and you might both realize that you're actually on the same page and no offense was needed. So there's all sorts of amazing things that can happen there, or it simply might be the challenge to clear the air. You might actually have to clear the air. So goals and desires, responsibilities, uncompleted acts, and areas to make amends. Now, what David Allen would suggest is, as far as his GTD, would be to look at all of these areas and then work on each sort of thing as a project. And that's great. What our mentor suggested, and what he received through all of the prayer and meditation, really this was, I guess, a spiritual insight that he feels that he received, was he was told that you really want to order this in easiest to get done right to the top of the list was hardest. And you just needed to work on the simple things first. And that from that way you would be moving forward in all sorts of different areas of your life, moving from the, I can do that, yeah, I can do that, yeah, I feel like I can do that, boom, 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 boom. And you're just moving from success to success, getting through, creating order in your life. And what I found exciting when I read all of David Allen's work is that his philosophy with getting things done was essentially a way of utilizing an organization system to do exactly what our mentor taught us, to create order in your whole life. So just like Asher Tyson talked about there, there's a real spiritual thing that goes on here when we create order. So we use tools such as Trello and Toodle-Do to create order and know which is the next logical task amongst all sorts of different things. There's all sorts of organizational systems out there. They're just a couple of free examples. So there you have it, from chaos to freedom. Benefits of being organized. So we would love to hear if you had any particular insights from anything that we covered here on the show. And so, look, any success stories as well. But of course, if you're new to what we do here in the Savvy Team Wellness community, then we would love to know, how can we help you? How can we help you reach a higher level of health and lifestyle? If you can tell us what you want, we can show you how to achieve it. And so whether that be in the area of health and vitality, or whether that be in the finances and lifestyle side of things, then we can point you in some of the different directions there. For example, through our Savvy Home Business division, we can help you create a bit of a side hustle income, working alongside whatever else you're currently doing. So for your best wellness journey, you'll want a plan, you'll want some solutions, you'll want guidance, and you'll want a community to support you along the way. And that's what we offer. So do request an invitation. So look, thanks for joining us for the show. Great to have you. I'd love to hear your insights. And please do join us in this Healthy Heart movement and share this information with other people and with those that you care about. So until next time, Corey Sievers here, encouraging you to be savvy. All the best. Catch you around soon.